Choosing the right property strategy at the start is probably the most important decision you'll ever make. I bought 22 properties using a few different strategies, and I've learned that some strategies work and some get you nowhere. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 main property strategies for beginners, which ones make you money and which ones end up costing people time and stress. Let me start with the one most beginners get sucked into and end up with very little to show for it. So when I first started investing properly back in 2019, I started looking around at what everyone else was doing. At the time, there was one strategy everyone was talking about. People were saying things like no money down, low barrier to entry, fast way to make money. And when you're new to property, that sounds perfect, especially if you've got a full-time job, a family, and not much spare time. So I started to look into it seriously, trying to understand how it worked and see if it made sense for me as a beginner. But pretty quickly, something didn't sit right, because the whole reason I got into property in the first place was for additional income, some level of freedom, not something that replaced my job with another one. And the more I dug into this strategy, the clearer it became. This wasn't really property investing, it was a property business, a very hands-on one. You're managing people, managing problems, running on tight margins, and relying on everything going right just to make a profit. That strategy was called rent to rent, and in simple terms, instead of buying the property yourself, you take control of someone else's property. You agree on a fixed rent with the landlord, then you try to earn more than that and keep the difference as a profit. Some people do it by splitting the property into multiple rooms, others do it by renting it out on a nightly basis instead of monthly. And yes, on paper it can generate cash flow, but here's the part most beginners don't think through. You don't own the asset, you're not building equity, you're not building wealth, you're just controlling a property that belongs to someone else, which means you're not really in control. One landlord changes their mind, one contract doesn't get renewed, rules change, regulations tighten, which they've started to already, and suddenly it's game over. You could end up years building it up and still end up with nothing to show for it. It's not passive, you can't build a legacy for your kids, and that's the problem with rent to rent. And it definitely doesn't suit someone who wants property to simplify their life. Having tried and looked at a lot of different strategies, rent to rent is right at the bottom for me. And before we move on, here's a filter I used when I started looking at different strategies. If your goal is long-term success in property, which it should be because it's the only way you can succeed, you really need to just ask one thing: does this strategy help me build long-term wealth? If not, like rent to rent, I'd move on and pick a different strategy. Now the next strategy looks like a step up from rent to rent, and in some ways it is, but it comes with challenges that most beginners underestimate. So when I was early on in my property journey, just like most people, my main focus was cash flow. I wasn't looking to build something flashy, I just wanted property to start paying me back properly, right? And at the time, there was one strategy that looked like the obvious answer. You'd hear these headlines everywhere: £1,000 a month in profit, £2,000 a month in profit, big numbers on paper. A lot of people online were pushing it hard, so naturally I had to look into it. And I actually went ahead and used this strategy early on, because when you're starting out and you're comparing different strategies, this one looked like it ticks all the boxes. But here's the thing that most beginners don't understand: this strategy isn't straightforward. The reality is that today there's a lot of competition, which means you can't just do a basic setup and expect it to work. You have to spend more money. The finish has to be good. In most cases you need en-suites, and that's before you even get into licensing, planning and council rules. A lot of areas now have Article 4 in place, which means the council don't even allow to do this strategy in certain locations because there's already too many of them. And to be honest, that alone should tell you something. Now just to be clear on what this strategy actually is, it's called houses of multiple occupation, short for HMOs. It's where you buy a property and rent it out by the room instead of one household. And yes, on paper the numbers can good. Look, I've got an HMO myself, I've still got it, and it makes me around £800 to £1,000 a month in profit. But the problem is you've got higher bills, there's more management, more wear and tear. 5 rooms means 5 showers, 5 toilets, 5 sets of people using the place daily. And if you've got more rooms, then it's more problems, because every extra room increases the chances of something breaking. And there's always uncertainty. Will all the rooms stay let? Will someone move out? Will maintenance wipe out a good month? You can put systems in place, sure, but it's still intensive. And there's another part people rarely talk about. HMOs tend to attract a very different tenant profile. That's not a judgment, it's just reality. People who can comfortably afford a whole house usually rent a whole house, not a room on its own, right? So even though the cash flow can look good month to month, the long-term picture isn't always as strong as people expect. That's why I place HMOs in C tier, 4th on my list. If you want to go full-time into property and you're happy with hands-on management, HMOs can make sense. But if you've already got a job, a family, and you just want additional income on the side, this strategy can quickly become more work than you planned for. Trust me, I've been there. And the next strategy is one of the simplest ways to build long-term wealth, and because of that, a lot of people just ignore it. So when I bought my first property, I made a lot of mistakes, honestly, and a lot of them were avoidable. And the reality is almost everyone makes their biggest mistakes on their first deal. That's why when you're starting out, I don't think your first property should be about trying to be clever or making loads of money. It should be about getting your foot in the door, getting used to how property actually works. Because if the first deal goes wrong, that's usually when people give up. So early on, I realized I needed a strategy that let me dip my toes in property without taking on too much risk. Something simple, something that still worked even if I didn't get everything right. And this strategy does exactly that. Even though I made all these mistakes over about 10 years, the property still went up in value by 50%. On top of that, it's been bringing in roughly £4,000 a year in cash flow. So that's £40,000 for those 10 years. And here's the important part. I didn't do anything fancy. No heavy refurb, no splitting the property into multiple rooms. It was just a straightforward buy-to-let. Now, I know buy-to-lets get a bad rep. People say they're boring, but that's exactly why they work so well at the start. They teach you the fundamentals without giving you too many ways to mess things up. And if you just zoom out and think long term, the maths, it's pretty simple. Historically, UK prices have grown at around 9% a year on average. So let's say you bought a standard buy-to-let for £200,000 at even a conservative 6% growth. After 10 years, that £200,000 property of yours would be roughly worth £360,000. That's £160,000 in profit without doing anything complicated. On top of that, rent help covers costs, wear and tear, and gives you some extra income along the way. Just simple, boring, long-term investing, and that's the point. Your first property isn't about being excited, it's about getting into property. And that's why for beginners, this is one of the simplest and most reliable ways to start building long-term wealth. It's not the best strategy, but it's a solid one, which is why I put it in B tier, 3rd on my list. So if you're just starting out, focus on getting your first buy-to-let right, build your confidence, let time do its thing, and use that foundation to grow into bigger deals down the line. Then possibly you could do the next strategy, which is where the returns can be higher, but the workload and risk step up too, but at least you'll be ready. So once you've got a few buy-to-lets under your belt, something usually happens. You get comfortable. You've made some mistakes, you've learned the basics, things are ticking along, and naturally you start wanting more income, better returns, but at the same time, you don't want to take a big swing and get burnt. That's exactly where I was. I bought a number of buy-to-lets, so I started looking for a strategy that sat somewhere in the middle, something with higher upside than a buy-to-let, but without locking myself into something that could go badly wrong. And the reason this strategy appealed to me was because if it didn't work, I could always convert it back to a normal buy-to-let. But if it did work, I could make 3 or 4 times more. That's when I pivoted into service accommodation. In simple terms, instead of renting the property out monthly to a tenant, you rent the property out nightly to guests. Think of it like a small self-contained hotel, a home away from home. It's usually listed on platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com. And yes, it can make more money than a standard buy-to-let, but here's the part you need to understand before you consider service accommodation. This is definitely not passive investing. It's a property business. There are cleaners to manage, bookings to coordinate, issues to deal with. You can put systems and management in place, but that comes at a cost and eats into your margins. And there's unpredictability. Income can be seasonal. It's very area dependent and demand matters a lot. Some months are great, others are going to be quieter. That's the trade-off. Now, there are other benefits that buy-to-lets don't have. People staying in a service accommodation aren't tenants, they're guests, and their rights are different, so you've got more control if things go wrong. Because of the flexibility and higher cash flow potential, this can make a lot more money than a standard buy-to-let. Similar to a HMO actually, but the difference between a service accommodation and a HMO is that if a service accommodation doesn't work out, you've only really invested into the furniture, which you can actually sell, and you can always pivot back. With a HMO, it's a lot harder because now there's en-suites, there's multiple showers and so on. That's why I put service accommodation accommodation at number 2 as long as you understand the downsides and know whether the area has real demand. But how do you find out the demand? Before you consider this strategy, open up Airbnb and check these 3 things. Number 1, are similar properties in the area getting recent regular reviews? Number 2, do the calendars look booked out or just partially booked? And then number 3, are the nightly rates strong enough to still work out after all the costs? If you see consistent booking and reviews, there's demand. If not, the strategy won't work magically just because you want it to. Which brings me to the final strategy, and in my opinion the most powerful one. It's the main reason I was able to build my portfolio as quickly as I did. Without it, it would have been impossible. And the reason it's so powerful is because it solves a problem most beginners run into sooner or later. You don't want to wait 15-20 years for growth, and you also don't want to gamble everything on something risky. You want a way to move faster without relying on luck. That's exactly where this strategy comes in. What I like about this strategy is that it takes the best parts of everything. It gives you the upside of flipping, but without selling the property and paying tax. It's got the long-term foundations of a buy-to-let, and it can even work out with HMOs or service accommodation later on. But instead of waiting years for a property to go up, you take control of it yourself. You buy a property that needs work, you refurb it, and you force the value up. That's the key difference. You're not hoping the market does the heavy lifting, you're creating the value yourself. Typically, that refurb might take 3 to 6 months. Once the work's done, that property is worth more, and that's when things start to compound. At that point, you refinance the property at the new value, pull most of your money back out, and then go again. And this is called the BRR strategy: buy, refurb, rent, and refinance. Let me give you a simple example. Say you buy a property for £150,000. You spend £40,000 on the refurb. So in total, you've put in £190,000. After the refurb, you've forced the appreciation up, you've added value to it, and now the property is revalued at £235,000. You then refinance at a 75% loan to value, which gives you about £175,000 back. And with that £175,000, you effectively get most of that £190,000 back, which means you've only left in £15,000 into this one property off your own money in the deal. And this is why this strategy matters, because if you start your property journey with say £75,000 in the bank, right? You could repeat this process 5 times and you'd have 5 properties using this process. That's 5 properties, 5 rental incomes, 5 appreciating assets, all from recycling the same pot of money. That's why BRR is powerful. It's one of the most proven and repeatable ways to scale quickly. I wouldn't have been able to build my portfolio anywhere near as fast as without this strategy, and we wouldn't have been able to do the volume of deals we do in our property sourcing business without it either, because you can combine BRR with buy-to-lets, you can do it with HMOs or even service accommodation. And at the end of it, you leave in very little money in each deal. The returns can be much higher. That's why I rank this right at the top as S tier. Now, like any strategy, it does have downsides. The first is refurb costs. If your refurb runs over, your margin gets squeezed. The second is revaluation. Even with strong evidence, a surveyor can come in lower than expected, which means you leave more money in the deal. So you need buffers and you need to be realistic. You can control the refurb. You can't fully control the valuation. But there are a couple of things you can do to increase your chances of getting the revaluation figure you want. First, go on Rightmove and look at sold prices, not asking prices. Focus on similar properties in the same postcode, ideally sold within the last 2 years. 2 years is the sweet spot. If you can do 1 year, it's even better. But if there's nothing recent, you can look further back and use your own judgment. The second thing is to check the size of the property. You can usually find it on the Rightmove listing, but sometimes you can't. And if you can't, go on the government's Energy Performance Certificate website and look up the floor area of both properties. The property that has been sold that you're looking to compare it to, and the property that you've purchased and you're looking to refurb and refinance. They don't need to be identical, but they should be similar. That's how you turn valuation into an educated estimate, and that's exactly how we approach BRR deals. So now you've seen the most popular property strategies ranked from worst to best for beginners. And if you've got some money saved up and you want to understand how BRR works in the real world, I've got another video over here where I break down how to buy 3 properties with £50,000 using BRRR step by step. So I'll see you over there.